Hello, everyone. How are we today?
Hello, pretty well, thanks.
Cool. Excellent. So we've got a few topics on the agenda for today. We've got an update on the charters for working groups, support for working group operations, the next stem cell proposal status, and any other business. So it probably makes sense then to start with the first one there. So an update on the charters for working groups. So I'll give my quick update on that. So I was looking at the working group for vulnerability management, and I did manage to have a conversation with Paul, who is currently drafting something and should hopefully have it over to me in the next day or so, and I'll then convert it into a PR format so that it can move forwards from there. Looking at the current open PR 154 to add the stub template for CF on Kubernetes working group. That's got a couple of approvals on there, but it's open for the wider TOC to have a look at. I'll just grab that and post a link in the chat. So that's the only open one we have presently. Everything else is still in stub state. So how are we going with the service management working group?
Good, but we're stalled for a week because Marcella and I are working on it together and she went out of town.
Cool.
But I think we are making progress. We're tracking down approvers for everything, Service Fabric and PXC. There's not PXC, but anyway, there's a bunch of miscellaneous properties we have to track down some approvers for. I think she might still be on vacation next week. So I think it's going to be like 2 weeks before we put it out for approval.
Okay, cool. All right. Done vulnerability, community experience we've not started looking at yet, so no worries there. App runtime interfaces, how's that one going?
It's pretty much stalled. There's no real additional content or contributors. We are lacking a work group lead. And beside Kapi, there are no committers yet. What I could do is simply to scan a few of the, let's say, key projects like CLI and simply invite by adding the current committers as far as I can see it from the, let's say, last few days, and ask them to step back or accept their nomination. I would not do that for the more, let's say, Stratos notifications, multi-ups, etc. things, and I would either they engage themselves or not. That would be my regarding work group leads. Yeah, that's I think the biggest open topic to have a driver here.
I put forward a nomination for Greg as a suggestion on that PR. If you think that that's a good idea, you can work with him to help nail down some of the working group like committers or approvers. Feel free to reach out to him on Slack, open source Slack. He'll definitely be responsive. I've mentioned to him that I'd love his help specking out that working group, making sure we have all the right repos and all of the right people that are currently active as far as he can tell in all those repos. So feel free to use that if you want to.
Yep, we'll do so, and then we go from there.
Okay, cool. So just looking through, we could do with someone to have a look at the community experience working group, because that's one that we've not done anything with as yet, other than just place the stub there. Anybody fancy giving that a go?
I could probably take that on. I think if we view it being focused on in probably the near term owning the existing docs repositories, then
Yeah.
David and I have the closest ties to the existing folks that have contributed a lot to the doc system. So,
Okay,
yeah, why don't you sign me up for that one?
cool. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all the working group bits that we've got in flight at the moment. Just double checking. No, I don't think I've missed anything there. Anyone got anything else to add in? Okay. Shall we? Oh, no.
Well,
Shall
I
we?
guess, yeah, just to circle back on the CF on Kate's PR, I think
yes.
that is ready. We can check on the timelines. I made a slight swap for the tech lead role as Georgi Sabev from SAP was interested in taking over that responsibility from Mario Nichev, but otherwise it's been unchanged. If everyone gets a chance to sign off on it or to comment on it one way or the other, then we can drive that to resolution.
Okay, excellent. Okay, I'll put that in as an action for us all. So then support for working group operations, which you added, Eric.
Yeah, sure. So I was thinking, now that we actually have some working groups approved, we expect them to actually start holding some regular meetings in public and to be keeping notes logs and to be setting up some sort of roadmap to broadcast. And so I just thought it'd be good for us to start talking about how we can support those working groups with any kind of maybe CFF owned document machinery like in Google Drive or any other resources that we'd be able to offer from the community officially in support of those working groups.
We can certainly set up Zoom calls and yeah, a Google Drive if needed. Certainly we could set something like that up.
Yeah, great. That's great, Chris. I was wondering, I mean, I don't think we've had any like shared storage space in Google Drive for the community. And it's always been people sharing documents from their individual organizations. So I was curious about both the, I guess, how much that would end up costing if we were providing something like that. I mean, I guess CFF already has some sort of Google plan. So I have no idea how much that would cost to, provide shared infrastructure for documents like that.
Right. I mean, I know that users cost like $12 a month. If I create an email account, whether it's used or not, that's $12 a month. That can add up pretty quick. But like as far as a Drive folder, I think I could just create a new folder and make it public. I don't think that would cost anything.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, a little bit. But.
Right. You want a shared Drive folder that is independent of any one person,
right.
Which I think you can do. Like we use team drives all the time, but I don't know if they're specific to an org and you can't add people from outside the org. It's worth looking into options, Chris, but that's what we're looking for, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I guess the other aspect of that would be the membership if we had a shared drive that was going to contain all those things. I mean, we might be able to crib a lot from Knative because I think they've had a structure like that for their artifacts. And then they've had, I think, explicit membership on the drive. There's like a distribution list or Google group or something that people can sign up for, and when they're added to that, then they get at least some sort of access to that drive.
It's like what I've seen in the Istio community. This is actually even a self-service, so you can just join one of these groups and then you have access to the documents. I suppose the main reason was to prevent spamming using the comment function of Google Docs. So there was no anonymous commenting allowed, and I think that's a good thing.
Right.
And if only to remind me to sign in, because that happens to me as well. I comment as anonymous without actually wanting to do that.
And we don't want to be creating separate users because nobody wants to manage another Google account anybody who wants to contribute already has a Google account or can do a Gmail account, right? Like, so it seems a little silly to be like, and you should sign up for a new Google account. Everyone who's a contributor or whatever, approver plus and CFF. Fail.
In the past, we had this CFAR project to capture new requirements that are cross-cutting concern over the different projects. Will that survive, or what is the idea here? I just wonder because I recently opened a new requirement just to have a starting point for discussion.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Stefan. We could try to keep using that for proposal tracking within the app runtime. I wonder if some of the project machinery might be better suited to that nowadays. I haven't taken a look at a lot of the details of that in GitHub myself.
I mean, there are some pros and cons. There are these issues actually were used there. Then you can refer to them in a project, if I remember correctly. The access rights are a bit strange. So I could create something, but I could not assign labels and could not assign it to the project, etc. And well, if you use issues, then the history is somehow not as nice as if you use real sources with PRs, etc., which is usually better. But at the end of the day, the tickets are there as just a teaser, and then they refer to Google Docs. So it's fine. It worked out well for the space supporter role, where we had some cooperation, etc. And so I thought that's a good starting point to open the next requirement coming from SAP. Independent, there's no pressure, nothing. But just wanted to write it down.
Yeah, definitely.
So you're talking
maybe
about, oh, sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, so you're talking about projects or repo specific projects, or is it an org project?
The project, I can.
So it would be a project mapped or in the context of a repo, because we Chris and I did like a explore on the using projects, org projects, and we found that there's limitations. There's 25 repos that you can link, so that's not enough, and you cannot do cross organization linking, so that those are limitations that are currently blocking us from using GitHub projects, at least for like the whole working group.
Yeah, I'm not an expert here in GitHub, but I'm referring to this project that I put into the chat.
Okay, that makes sense.
Seems like the cross-org limitation could be resolved by getting rid of the incubator or folding in the properties that are actually being used, such that you don't have anything.
Yeah, that's what we thought, and then we run into the 25 projects or repos per project limit.
Okay.
For some projects is probably fine, but for Bosch and others, no.
I doubt there's any working group that has less than 25 repos, given how the fidelity. We made course working groups, and then we went and did a search, and there's just tons of repos everywhere. It's crazy.
Yep.
And then someone found another org.
That one's not ours. Well, I think we could certainly start incrementally with the support. Like we can set up Zoom calls, coordinating with the leads for the working groups, including you, Ruben. And one of the nice things about Google Drive is that we could just start the journal in someone's personal drive and then move it into the shared drive later. So we could retain the identity of that document without having to have all of the details of that Google Drive machinery worked out right now. And then for the roadmap management, again, that's something that I think we could like maybe just start small with whatever the working groups think are going to work for them, and try some smaller scale experiments there. Then maybe make a cross-cutting decision based on some initial rounds of feedback.
We could also try to approach GitHub if that is a hard limit or like what that exactly entails. And additionally, regarding the size of the working groups, I'm not even sure if we should be having or striving for a single project for the roadmap of the working group, or if there are actually like subtopics that should get a roadmap.
Mhm.
But still, like, I mean, having a hard limit of 25 is still sad and might be a good reason to search for something different.
The main driver for at least the foundational infrastructure group was like, we just want like one place where we can go to, like have a regular meeting and then just triage, like see what are the pull requests that need to be looked at and who's going to look at those, right? It's just a practical thing of visibility, seeing what we have and who's going to do what.
Anyway, GitHub is overhauling their whole project management stuff currently in a beta, which we could get access to, but I don't know. Like, I didn't really follow up on that one, trying to get an org set up. We could still do that in kind of, if we anyhow have an org to try things out, like management of permissions. I think there was something we could actually try to enable that project management there and have a look if that lifts these kind of restrictions. I think it's planned to be released this year, like so, to exit the beta, but I'm not entirely sure.
It would be nice if we could just use GitHub and not have to set up something external, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I agree on that one.
I don't know if we have contact with GitHub to ask about these things, or like, I assume we have like some crazy plan with the amount of repos we have, but it's mostly open source. So
it's also a very it's a, I believe we're still on a legacy plan. Like they don't currently offer the type of plan that Cloud Foundry is on. So any that's come up with that in the past, they've kind of been encouraging us to upgrade or you know, move to one of the newer plans, and we've resisted that for a couple of reasons. But it's been a while since I've thought about that. But a couple of years ago, when GitHub Actions first came out and things like that, they gave like temporary access, and then they took it away, but then they gave it back to everyone. And yeah, so I can look into this, but that was somewhat frustrating a couple of years ago when we looked into that before.
And Ruben, you did, just to come back to your comment, you were thinking you just want one place where you could say like, well, what are all the issues or PRs that have come in to across all these projects to help triage them and make sure that none of them fall through the cracks?
Yeah, so there will be some way to, we need some regular, maybe like weekly meetings to be there with all the people that, the approvers, right? And divide like who's gonna do what. Maybe that needs to have a more asynchronous. I've also been thinking maybe it should just be like some bot that randomly picks people, and we just say we always want 2 approvers. But still, right, even if you do that, there's also the chasing aspect, right? Maybe you assign them, but you still want these, like if we, with Bosch, we now have a bot that closes things or marks them as stale and then closes them like in 3 weeks or something. That has generally been quite good to close things, but you want before that, if things start to become stale or something, you want to take action. And because of the sheer number of repos, just relying on emails and seeing a random email, it's not gonna cut it. So yeah, that's just a really practical problem, I guess.
I think as well, from, you know, an outsider's view in, having a single place to see what's going on within that working group is actually a really valuable thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it becomes hard to track down what are all these streams of work and what are their dependencies.
Yeah, and also maybe something like as a process, just a few lanes where you like see things moving along, right? That would keep help people get a bit of confidence in that their contribution is actually yeah, moving forward, or maybe it's going to be merged at some point, right? That would be good.
Okay, Chris, so you're happy to contact GitHub to see if that limit is a hard one or a flexible one?
I can reach out to them and find out, yes, and see what's going on with that. I do have one friend that, yeah, anyway, yeah, I will reach out to GitHub in some manner and try and figure out something there, just to get confirmation about that. So I'll definitely get that done by next week.
Okay.
And I've reserved some time on Friday to spike on, I don't know, maybe looking into GitHub API and those types of, like, maybe do something to generate an overview, maybe like in Markdown style, like more of a, if we don't get anything else, right, have something that regularly generates an like a Markdown file that we can use as an agenda for a call, right? So we just have a bunch of links and see the status of those. I mean, that could also be a temporary solution to at least get started. We could use that Markdown file like for meeting notes as well. That's also something I'm gonna explore.
Cool. That sounds pretty cool. Have we got any more on the support for working group operations at the moment?
Ramon McKelly had pinged me and asked about getting GCP projects created for all working groups, because a couple of projects we're using the Bosch one and they're not in Bosch. So if that's of value, I can look into that. I know that the LF has a couple of things they're paying for that that are being used for CI and whatnot. But if we need to split that into other projects, I can do that. Just you know, wanted to mention that to the group, and then I can move ahead with that if as needed.
Yeah, what I've heard is that, so there, I know that we have this repo to deploy a concourse on GCP. We have automation for that. At least that started in the Bosch working group. And I think due to like some time sensitivity on the autoscaler part side, right, they are now using that concourse as well and the GCP account. But yeah, I think that decision was made because of time, and we said it would be a temporary thing. So
Yep.
yeah, it would be good to give them their own, or that working group their own GCP account and their own, and then ideally they could reuse that automation to set up a concourse as well.
I can follow back up with Ramon and get the exact title and everything, and then try and get that set up for them.
Same is true for some performance tests for the CF API. So we have also misused the Bosch concourse. That's because all the teams are sitting close together once we were in the offices.
Yeah, offices.
Yeah, you know.
Doesn't apply anymore. Those.
I assume that every working group doesn't need a GCP project, right? Like community experience probably doesn't need that. So I guess just as working groups need these things, just ping me and I can work that out with the LF and get that set up. But I'll start with Ramon, and then anyone else that needs something created, I can work on that.
Cool.
Ramon doesn't want the project. He just wants the people to get out of his concourse.
Well, then we end up again in the interfaces working group, because that's where the autoscaler is supposed to be. And here we are still lacking a little bit of a workstream lead and things like that. So it may get a little bit delayed.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. All right. Cool. So the next agenda topic that we've got up is the next stem cell proposal status. David.
Nice. I finally did it, and I sent the proposal to the community. I got 2 comments. One comment saying, yeah, it's a bunch of work to move our infrastructure over operating systems. We want to do it as little as possible. And another comment, which I couldn't quite tell exactly what they were saying. I need to write back, but I think it's saying like, you know, are we sure this is going to work when we only have 1 year of overlap, which is of course the risk. I think personally, I think I can rally a push for it for this time, but like, I don't know about 5 years from now or 4 years from now. Next time, that's like so long from now. I have no idea how hard it's going to be to rally a push for it. But like the good news is that would be a problem for 5 years from now. And I think I can rally the push. This is where I'd get the working group leads together and make sure we all have agreement that we're all going to do this. We're going to deprioritize some other things in order to prioritize this work when the time comes. And my document has examples of basically timelines about when different groups are going to have to engage, right? There's this like semi-parallel, semi-serial partial ordered lattice of dependencies in order to eventually get done. And yeah, any TOC folks or anybody on this call have anything they want to discuss about that? Oh, yeah. Do you want me to post a link to it?
I have something. Can we?
Yeah.
I don't know if I thought about this, but would that be a good opportunity to drop maybe Monet support?
Oh, Jesus.
I mean,
that
would be like a
problem.
big thing, right? I know,
Yeah.
but and it will have like a lot of impact everywhere. But it's kind of a big security thing, right? That we still rely on this thing that's not being updated anymore.
Yeah.
We have.
This is a scope creep situation that is going to come out of the woodwork. Like, hey, you know, we could drop the V2 build packs and do cloud native shim build packs. Hey, we could drop Monet and do whatever. And we could do all of those things. That's a good question, Ruben. I think the Monet decision is pretty far reaching. Now, if you continue to offer Monet and BPM as supported stem cell running things, then it's a pretty safe thing to do. Then you don't need global alignment to move over. If you don't, now you need global alignment to take every Bosch release and make sure it's been converted over, or at least has like both implementations, because it's probably designed to run across multiple stem cells. So you should make a separate proposal for that. Because like you could do it in a major release of Bionic too, right? Like you could do this anytime you want to. It would just be a major release, obviously not a patch, unless you can do it in a back-compatible way.
Don't really think so.
Yeah, so make a proposal for that. I think we should make a also separate proposal for doing the layered cloud native build packs. And I think these are interesting times to do both of those things. I think specifically for build packs, we're going to have to do work to get the V2 build packs to run on a new operating system. And so the question becomes, should we do that work or should we do different work? Which is riskier, and like people will have to switch build pack stacks. There won't be V2 build packs anymore on CF Linux FS4. I don't want to get in a situation where we have to do both ideally. So this is an interesting turning point, but I do think it is an orthogonal conversation, so we can like make a separate proposal for it and debate its merits.
Like, there have been decisions though, right, to like consciously break compatibility with the V3 thing. For getting rid of some like old legacy stuff, and that could turn out to be difficult. Like I just have a small example. I guess we would need to ask build pack colleagues. But one small example is that the old Java build pack had a JDBC functionality built in to detect like the driver. Like that was not like, I wouldn't recommend anyone to use that. Like it was really based on regex of Postgres was matching that thing, right? I recall testing times of CF4Ks where a team that was maintaining that was trying to build some Postgres functionality on a cluster, and they used a cluster URL that contained Postgres, and with that every service contained it. And that build pack functionality just says, yeah, there's more than one, I don't do anything. So it's not a functionality I would recommend people to use, but there might be other examples of things that were just thrown overboard And even that one might break some people, and so it's potentially difficult. But I agree that I'd rather invest there than into first moving the V2 build packs and then invest there. And it's like we wouldn't have to wait, right, for the new operating system to be available to start that work. So
right, and I think the build team has been working on this anyway. They've been trying various ways of shimming the V3 build packs into the Cloud Foundry without changing Cloud Foundry, right, into the V2 build pack contract. So like if that is actually successful, then they're basically shimming a set of layered cloud native build packs together and having it output a droplet rather than a Docker image. It's really quite cool. It's pretty inflexible. Like, you know, you take all this great flexibility and you dump out a like single implementation, which is very similar to the old build packs. And so you can decide what layers to throw in there, Jan. And maybe you can build layers with more compatibility if you want to and shim them in or not. But it is going to be a change. We think about it as like 95% compatible or 90% compatible, not 100% compatible. And so there will be some amount of apps that like don't work.
Oh, sure. You can do a lot. Like we had one team actually relying on that JDBC functionality, which is why I know that it was there and it was removed. And we basically integrated that with Paketo again, right? And like put it in there for some amount of time before we had enough convincing of they should just actually add it to the POM XML and be done with it. But yeah, that's why I knew that.
I think
interesting, by the way, because I think there would be two approaches. One is shimming, and the other would be to actually implement a cloud native build pack platform based on Diego, which shouldn't be too hard. Like we've just for other reasons worked on cloud native build pack functionality for a Jenkins library that SAP maintains in the open source, and it is not too hard to implement a platform. Given there is a container scheduler, and I mean Diego is one, so I'd suppose
do you need a registry? Do you need a registry?
Oh yeah, sure. You need a registry for that. That's true. Sure, but I mean, like, oh, you mean with shimming, we would get we would get the V3 build packs to write a droplet tarball and not need a registry? Okay, yeah, with that would be an argument because it doesn't like add something that needs to be done there. That's a good point, actually.
Yeah, like literally fits the inputs and output contract of the V2 build packs. So assuming that team's going to continue to explore this without us, I think there's a proposal to be made that this is the time to switch, or maybe regardless, there's a proposal to be made to do a switch and eventually get rid of the support for the old build packs. And I'd like to see that proposal coming from people more knowledgeable in that space, right? So like ideally, whoever's working, like maybe Stefan, that's you, who's been working with the build on the working group that's related to the build packs. I can't remember who ended up with the build packs from the TOC kickoff perspective, but try to get the like.
I had that, and then it was like when I was not there, Lee took over, and it was like used as the Paketo working group, and then the build pack rest was just moved over, I think, to interfaces.
To interfaces, the remaining is there in interfaces. So it's now spread, and that was one of my concerns in the beginning, wasn't it?
It was one of mine as well.
But okay,
no, but I think like
maybe to add one point here,
point of view.
What I find more important on the build pack stuff, you never reach 100% compatibility, and I would not even strive for. What is more important from my point of view is that we have both worlds in parallel on one foundation, because that allows developers to migrate and if you have that for 1 year, I think that's a feasible approach, and you can also ask or force the users of the platform to migrate in such a time period. You cannot do it, I switch on that day, but if you have both running for a while, then you can do such a migration. And yes, some people will complain and will escalate and whatever, but that happens anyway. So what? But if we think the new Paketo build packs are the future, then we should sooner or later try to bring them into something that is deployable with CF deployment. That would be my wish here, because that opens the roadmap then.
I'd agree with that one, because that way you're giving people the smallest possible change as part of the moving forwards, and they can test in their own time. So it's reducing that overall stress of the bigger changes.
All right, well, there's a proposal to be made here. It is related but semi-independent of the stem cell proposal. And Ruben, there's a more specific proposal that you could make about Monet. And I think you have my support as long as we think it's achievable without a ton of work and without breaking Monet compatibility. If you want to break Monet compatibility, that's where like you're going to need, like that's when it's no longer isolated to your area. It's like everybody's going to have to do major work to support this across the whole thing.
I mean, I think that is what we are. So BPM was always there to eventually get rid of Monet, right? And a lot of releases have switched over to BPM. So ideally, we just get BPM or Monet out, right? Because it's it's really legacy. We haven't shipped a new version. We are fixed on this really old version, and it's just, I don't know, maybe like a security concern as well, right? It being there, and it causes a lot of support issues, right? Because of the flaky behavior it has.
All right, well, make a proposal document.
I will
put the options of like having both or just having BPM, and we can discuss it in that document. That'll be fun.
I mean, both is what we currently have, right?
No.
Oh no, you mean native. So you would say if there's BPM, you would go straight from the agent.
Correct.
That makes sense.
Like we did with Windows, where there's like two kinds of runners supported.
Okay, that makes sense.
And you're still running on it.
You get like a benefit if you use BPM. We skip Monet. Well, that's interesting. I will think about it. We'll make a proposal.
And so, put both options in there, or 3 or 4 options in there, and we can like weigh various options. But you're right. This is the time to make major breaking changes. Yeah. But this is also how we end up like missing our 1-year overlap. We're like, and it should also do this thing, and then we should also use this as an opportunity to rewrite everything in whatever in Rust.
Yes, Rust. Okay, we'll make that proposal as well.
Been hearing a lot about Zig recently, so.
What's next on the agenda, Lee? Is there anything?
Next, we have any other business?
Jan from SUSE reached out to Eric and I last week and asked about kubectf and quarks and whether or not they should be archived, as no one's maintaining them right now. And I saw on the major repos, I saw 1 or 2 outstanding issues that people have added. So want to either find maintainers for those or go ahead and archive them. I said I'd reach out to CF Dev and see if someone wanted to pick it up, or figured we should ask about that here first. So any objections to archiving that if we can't find a maintainer in the short term, or any concerns about that, or does anyone want to maintain those?
Sounds like a sensible approach to me.
Okay, so I'll
agree.
Any objections? Otherwise, I'll post the CF Dev, give the community a week or so, and if no one jumps on that, then we'll go ahead and it's about 25 repositories, but only 2 that are kind of public facing, and but I'll go ahead and archive those.
I mean, your things can always be unarchived again if someone doesn't hear.
They can, yes. But it's better, I don't like the idea of people putting in issues and waiting on things that are never going to happen. So,
yeah.
Okay.
I guess the only other thing I can think of is the Cloud Foundry samples repo that appeared.
Or that's a GitHub org, right?
Yes, GitHub
Yeah.
org.
Yeah, it's a GitHub org. Like I was like, I think somebody tweeted something about CF, and I don't know what exactly it was, and I responded with that we are like kind of rebooting the governance, and one of the comments was that like there was a PR that was ignored for whatever. And this is an org that is showing the Cloud Foundry logo, showing like a link to cloudfoundry.org, and like looking at the list of members, these are people from the community. So we should maybe just make it clear that this is not a part of what the CFF maintains. Like, unless we actually want to take these examples, but in this case, I wouldn't adopt the org, but just the repos, right? If we want to have samples, like I think is Spring Boot, like the Spring Music example and these kind of things, are they over there? Then if we want to have examples, then working groups should take the repos instead of a separate org.
Yeah, but it was put in a separate org a little bit to be like, and these are some random examples that are like not Cloud Foundry. Like it's like a developer enablement best effort scenario. Though Jan, I could see a proposal for we need 2 sample applications or 1 sample application that is actually in the Cloud Foundry org, that is the canonical one that everybody uses for testing purposes. If that's Spring Music, that's fine. I made a commit to Spring Music with some folks just this week to add HTTP2 support at the end of last week. So we are maintaining it still.
It's like I don't know if we need that. Like that was just like an alternative to saying this is not part of what the CFF community maintains. The alternative would be to really take over maintaining it.
Yeah, I mean,
That's
it seems
fair.
like the cheapest thing to do right now would be, well, maybe figure out who has enough administrative rights over that org and help them clarify that this isn't an official CFF org. I mean, it has stuff that might be of utility to CF projects or deployments, but we don't have official responsibility over it. But yeah, then I think there's the separate topic of like, should Spring Music be part of the official CF repositories? Because we've seen it being a useful sample app and it does get used. I don't know. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
Beyond that, there's also Cloud Foundry community, there's Bosch-IO, there's Bosch-packages. All of these are GitHub orgs that are not owned or maintained by the Cloud Foundry Foundation and never have been. But they're out there and they're obviously, Cloud Foundry related. So, I mean, the same approach should apply to all of those, right? If we want to reach out and volunteer to take some of these, I think it would be probably on a repository by repository basis, but and independent working groups would probably want to make that decision. But where you do see things where it's like, yeah, that has the Cloud Foundry logo, links to cloudfoundry.org, it would be good to clarify whether or not those things are things that we're actively maintaining.
Chris, is there a list that you've already got of those?
I mean, just on this Word doc in front of me, not a canonical or source of truth list, but yeah, Cloud Foundry community is a big one. Cloud Foundry samples we just mentioned, and then there's Bosch-IO and Bosch-packages. Those are the only ones that come top of my mind.
Actually, on foundational infrastructure, did we even propose that working group would officially take ownership of those Bosch ones? I forget what the status of that was.
I think so, because they are in the list of official assets.
I guess it's worth also checking the copyright notice. I guess in some legal sense that probably determines who actually does own those repos, regardless of what org they're in.
Right. I don't know of any outside Cloud Foundry Incubator or Cloud Foundry Attic, or there's also the Cloud Foundry tutorials. outside of those, I don't know of any repositories that have a CFF copyright on them. But obviously we should find out. I mean, if we do, we'd want to know about that.
So foundational infrastructure has got the Bosch IO and Bosch packages in there. There's some incubator in there, some Cloud Foundry itself. Nothing Cloud Foundry community.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things in there. I know that Dr. Nick from Stark and Wayne was really involved in that, and I don't know how involved he would be at this point. But you know, there's quite a bit in the Cloud Foundry community GitHub org, but none of which I've ever actually really. I am an admin in that org. I made an admin at some point, but I don't take ownership of that really, or you know.
I'm checking the Bosch IO, some particular repos in the Bosch IO GitHub org, and it does look like they have CFF copyright notices on them. So I think those are at least the two that I've checked so far in the notice file.
No.
So I guess those, yeah.
If there's already a plan for those to have that working group take those, subsume those, then that will take care of that, right? We don't need to go back and correct those and then put them back on. But yeah.
It's sort of too bad that if some of the sample repos are going in, it sounds like working groups, which maybe is a mistake, but we kind of already solidified. We have to make a quick amendment if we want to those working groups to say that they don't include any of those.
Wait, are we listing any of the Cloud Foundry sample repos in working group assets?
Well, like Bosch samples. Right, Bosch samples was included in foundational infrastructures. Whoops. So if our policy is, I think we added it as like a, Ruben, you were just saying it was, right? And I think I agree with you if you were. Ruben's got a bunch of kids over there doing kid things. But I think it was included. I think the policy we're trying to set is that these samples are not really officially maintained Cloud Foundry assets. And so we want to just change the messaging on them and kick out any sample repos that maybe snuck in by accident.
Well, I see Bosch IO and Bosch packages repos, but I don't see any Bosch samples.
Right.
No, I don't.
Whew, close call.
Okay.
Yeah, I only put in stuff that we actually do maintain, right? Bosch packages is something that others rely on and that we consume as well. Same for Bosch IO, right? That's where we publish all the releases and stuff.
Okay, so it seems like those two Bosch orgs are actually set up to like secretly have been CF organizations all the time. Just maybe never listed them explicitly, but we still got this outstanding issue about like the CF samples org being potentially misleading to people coming into it. So again, it seems like we've got maybe a couple independent things to consider. Maybe the most immediate would be asking whoever has administrative rights in that org to like tone it down and make it clear that this is unofficial Cloud Foundry samples. But then it seems like we might have a longer running track about like, would we want to adopt any of the assets of that org into the official CF org?
That would be a question, I think, for the docs group.
Yeah, that's a good point, Ruben.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel very much community experience. Okay. Has anyone got anything else for any other business today?
Very minor thing. I took the liberty of starring the Cloud Foundry community repository within the Cloud Foundry org, because I felt like it was an important repository at this point. So just did that. I did notice the about section of that, I believe is from back before this repository took on the importance it has now. And it just says, because, comma, community matters. And community certainly does matter, but I thought that maybe a more descriptive description there would be good. If someone wants to.
Community matters and words also matter too.
Yeah, so I think something that highlights, exactly what this repository does at this point would probably be better suited there.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, that seems pretty reasonable. I'll try and come up with some words for that one. I'll bat them around on Slack. I think it's probably the easiest thing to come up with some words for that one.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I don't think that's PR-able territory, unfortunately.
No. Okay. Okay, cool. So let's just have a quick look on actions wise. So we've got Eric to begin the Community Engagement Working Group PR, a TOC review on the CF on Kubernetes Working Group PR. Chris is going to contact GitHub to see if the 25 repo per project is a hard limit. Ruben's spiking into the GitHub API to see if he can generate an agenda from that one for the call. Chris is going to contact Ramon to help with the account splitting for GCP. And I'm going to come up with some words for the community repo to replace the lacking words that are currently there. Have I missed anything?
Do we have a contact in that Cloud Foundry samples org? I mean, someone that we know would be an administrator that we could contact?
I don't know of any.
No.
I'm an administrator.
What?
Wait, are you all not administrators of Cloud Foundry samples?
I don't think so. I don't think I'm even a member.
I was trying to help Scott Frederick. I was trying to help Scott Frederick do something with the Spring Music, and I was like, I can accept this PR that I made, but maybe I shouldn't. Okay, so I'm also going to make more people, more members, more something. Sound reasonable? I'll add people because I shouldn't be the only one. I feel like I'm not the right person to put the right disclaimer on there anyway, language-wise. It's not my forte. But I will at least add you all. How about that? I mean, I'll make sure Chris is an admin as well.
Cool.
Oh, there's some old repos in here. Could use some with some archiving. I mean, some of these are going to hit the decade mark.
Wow.
Next year in terms of modification. Anyone remember VMC push? That's in the docs on some of these.
Nope. Okay, cool. So sounds like we've got to the end of today then. So enjoy all, and I will catch you next week. All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Hello.